So Leon has managed to play the newest game from Arkane, which is Redfall. It's something that we've all been really excited about, and you've actually managed to get your hands on with it for an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's really good. I really, really liked it. I really kind of struggled trying to write it up because I was desperately trying to avoid saying it's Far Cry with vampires. But while it has that kind of Far Cry sort of feel to this massive open world, everything about it is really, really arcane. The thing I kept thinking of was when you played sort of Dishonored, and sometimes you'd go in a little side alley or you'd take a random turn, you'd see a few guards chatting and you'd find like a whole thing that you weren't, you could have just walked past. Yeah. It's like that, but in this sort of whole open world. Like you start in a fire station base, and I left to sort of explore, and immediately I could hear some voices, and I was like, I'm going to go see what that is, and and you see some lights over there, and it's very kind of
natural
inviting. Yeah, like Harvey Smith, the creative director and Arkane's sort of head honcho, Deus Ex, all that sort of thing. He was there, and he's like, you could explore, but it's probably best if you do the mission we sort of set out for you. And I was like, I want to explore. Yeah. And I had enough time in the end, so that was fine. But if you do the missions, you find these very beautifully scripted, lovely sort of designed missions. Like the mission I played was you go to a house to investigate the CEO of the company responsible for the vampires. The setup is there's a dodgy pharmaceutical company that was looking into immortality. They've created vampires as a result. All the kind of the executives, it's probably quite a sort of a metaphor here, but all the executives of the big business, the big pharma, are now like the vampire gods. Oh, that's so good. You're taking out the board. Yeah, essentially, yeah. And you're going to the CEO's house to try and find out more. When you get there, it's immediately this kind of creepy haunted house kind of thing. There's banging in the kitchen, go see what that is. And it's all spooky and weird. And it looks lovely. And you find this dollhouse, which has these gaps for 3 dolls. And when you find these 3 dolls, you can sort of psychically enter the dollhouse, which is basically the house you were just in, but now you're inside a kind of a spooky version. All the floors warp a little bit. There's a big void that's just missing in the middle where something bad happened. And you find these memories, essentially these kind of memory residues floating around that you can find, and then you fill in the backstory, and it turns out that the CEO was doing something, I won't say anymore, but you have quite a strong story in there when you follow the story. If you want to just wander off. And there was a side mission to get popcorn for this. You're in a fire station, basically. You've got all the people there, and there's traders and vendors. And You can equip it and sort of make it better. So the one mission I had was to go get popcorn machine, because apparently that was going to make the apocalypse. But then somebody would give you something, so you're fine. Yeah, but there's also safe houses. If you can claim a safe house by clearing out the local kind of cultists, getting the generator online. That gets you a bit of the map back, or gives you a fast travel point at least. There's vampire nests that you go into, and these are again sort of weird psychic kind of areas, a bit sort of otherworldly, a bit like the Void in Dishonored, and they're sort of recognizable bits of the town, but it's all a bit floaty and weird. And when you go into them, and they're also a bit sort of like loot dungeony. If you go in there, you take out the heart, which is a massive heart, and you have to sort of take out these things, and you get some loot and a power up you can only get. Or a kind of power-up you can only get from the nests, and again you get a bit more of the map back. Because this is the other thing they're doing with this, is it's kind of like a looter shooter. There's a lot of different guns you can get, and equipment and thing that you can add to it. Gunplay feels like a step up from anything they've sort of done before. Because it was pretty good in Deathloop, so it's interesting that they've stepped up even further. Yeah, and the one thing you don't have is, I think, at the level I played at least, quite as much mobility. This is Devinder's teleporter, which lets you basically throw out a disc and move around. You can sort of slide about, but it doesn't quite have, say, the blinky sort of stuff. So I played as Devinder. He has an electric spike there, and those are his sort of 2 main powers: the electric spike and the teleporter disc. They feel great. He also has a UV spotlight, which petrifies vampires. There's 4 different characters. I forget the names off the top of my head, but one is has psychic powers. She does the lift that acts like a jump pad, has a umbrella shield. Another one's got a robot, and the other guy is sort of stealthy, has a raven he can send out, and he's a snipery guy. So they all perform differently. So the vampires can only be killed one of 2 ways. You either have to damage them enough so that their heart's exposed and then you stake them, or you can sort of petrify them with UV light and then smash them, and then they sort of fall apart. So there's a really nice kind of rhythm to fighting the vampires, because you can't just shoot them and they're gone. They're not bullet sponges. It's no. There are mechanics that you have to follow, or they will not die. Yeah, so you have to sort of balance. You're either trying to delay things or hold things back so you can get to the one that's weakened and stab them. His big super Devinder's alt ability is this big UV light that pulses out light around you, and then you can run around. Sort of
Everyone's just going around melee.
You also have a weapon that is like a UV cannon essentially, and it like fires out UV light that you can use. So I had that like on my hip, like ready to go.
So you can swap out.
Yeah, so I had my main gun for like just general damage dealing, and then whenever there were vampires, I pulled out this UV cannon and was sort of smashing them. But yeah, you have to sort of be aware of like dealing with all the sort of threats around you, so you can permanently deal with whichever vampire is sort of exposed. Talking
about this sounds very much like, oh, this is a team-based game. We've got to work together. You all have different abilities and stuff. But you played this solo.
No, it's both. This is the thing. It's like they said it works either way, and I was worried a little bit about whether it would. And it works fine. Like at no point I completely forgot it's meant to be a co-op game.
That's really reassuring.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think that it will be interesting to see how the powers kind of work. The one they keep showing in the trailers is the sort of the lift that fires people up. So I don't quite know how well the rest of the sort of powers will sort of work. I know the character's got the robot. The robot can sort of attract people's attention, so you could use the robot to draw them in and then throw the electric spike there, or the UV spotlight thing. So it seems to work brilliantly single player. Like at no point did it feel like this is a co-op game I'm playing on my own. It's just felt like this is just a single player game. Obviously, it is an open world game. One of the things that was sort of interesting is that when you're doing stuff out in the world, you're kind of getting like almost like a vampire, like attention meter, almost like a wanted rating. So if you take down a nest or do a safe house, if you finish a main mission, this little sort of meter fills up, and it's like the gods are watching you.
Please tell me it's like GTA, and if you get 5 stars, all of a sudden tanks appear out of nowhere.
Well, a meter is filling up, and it says the gods are watching you. And when it maxes out, there's a character called the Rook, who's essentially like this kind of enforcer. So all this sort of red lightning starts coming down, and the world starts to look even more.
So it wasn't too far off with the tank.
This Rook appears, and it's like a sort of a boss fight. Reminded me a bit weirdly of the nightmare in Prey, which is like a persistent bogeyman that follows you around the station. But the Rook appears, and you have a big sort of boss fight, and you have to sort of take him out.
But then you get loot from it, and you kind of know that it's coming, I guess, because you can see your meter going up. So you're like, okay, guys, we need to just let's just deal with this. Let's find a field that's empty. And
I don't know quite how the meter sort of resets or how that kind of works, but you sort of it's going to come.
They're just doing. There's so many things to talk about.
The looter shooter is interesting because you have your set of guns, and if you look in your inventory, you can see you got a purple one, a green one, a blue one. So they have that kind of looter shooter rarity system, but it doesn't really feel. It's not like the kind of the point of playing. You just might be kind of like. That's a slightly better version of the gun I've got. I'll grab that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the feel of, say, something like Borderlands or Tiny Tina's, where you're running around hoovering everything up,
and then sitting in your menus going.
You don't have stats popping up everywhere. It's
right. Okay. So there's a reassurance.
There's a whole bunch of assault rifles, and they level up, and they have different sort of abilities, maybe, and you just.
But if you've got the one that you like.
Like I really like the assault rifle I had. It was meaty and nice to use, so I stuck with it for most of my time playing it.
Seems really interesting. It seems like, especially with, and again, I don't want to I'm not trying to shit on Far Cry, but there's like a Far Cry fatigue to a certain extent. Far Cry's got too busy, too much.
This is the problem. I think I struggled for a long time trying not to make that comparison because. I like Far Cry, some people don't, but it is a very kind of cookie cutter sort of open world. They've made essentially the same game like what will be on there, Far Cry 6, so 5 times because one was completely different, and obviously the DLC, and it's quite a cookie cutter thing, but it works nicely, and I like the world, I like the ability to explore, and this has that kind of feel of, there's just things everywhere to kind of look at. I took a couple of safe houses back, so I got some fast travel points. It has that side of Far Cry, and any open world game, even like a GTA or whatever, you have the map, and as you explore and do things, you claim sort of more ownership of it. You find like things to do. You're like, this actually is quite more an involved.
But I'm just hoping that they take they learn from Far Cry and they've gone less is more, where it's like either more scripted things or smaller things. I don't want to open my map and just have it flooded with icons.
It's not like that. I don't think it's not like Far Cry in the sense of like it's Far Cry, but it's that's the easiest kind of thing to compare it to, and it's everything about it feels Arkane-y. Like there's all these sort of lovely. Sort of little story touches in the world. You hear people talking, you see things, you explore. It feels like what you'd find in maybe a Dishonored more than anything else is one I kept thinking of. If you took that sort of Dishonored open, sort of semi-open world space that they have, but put it over a whole map.
But this is what I love about Arkane is like, The only way to explain Arkane games is you have to compare them to something else. You're like, it's like this, but it's not. And it's like this, but it's not. And that's the beautiful thing about Arkane. It's like, they don't make anyone else's games. They make Arkane games. And like you said, it's Arkane doing it. If Arkane did Far Cry with vampires.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like anything else. Like, I don't know if you didn't know Arkane that well, you would recognize it as Arkane, but you know, yeah, it has a vibe, it has a sort of feel that you don't get in a kind of a more standard kind of open world game where they've made a map and they have to fill it up. This is like all the stuff you'd expect from that studio, but just in more of a space, and it's less a case of, you know, you have some alleyways that open up a bit. This is like you can go in any direction at any time and find something.
It looks amazing. When's it coming out?
May the 2nd.
So quite soon. Yeah. Let us know in the comments below whether you'd play it solo or whether you'd want to play it as a team. It's great that you can play it both, and also what class or what character, that you'd be playing. And are you excited for May 2nd? Because I know we are.